En muy poco tiempo, un tornado de vida la golpeó duramente.
Ultimately, short version of a much longer story, I quit my job, sold my house, and divorced my husband in a single month. And realized that.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah. So I'll give you a little more context. Unfortunately, my sister was diagnosed with a terminal cancer, and so it was one of those moments that I think we've all.
El estudio que rompe el mito sobre el estrés.
We looked at 30,000 Americans across 8 years' time. And the premise was these are very high stress people. And they simply asked the question, do you believe that stress is bad for your health? And if you're a high stress individual who believes that stress is bad for your health, you have a really high mortality rate. So about 43% of those people.
Entonces, ¿cómo deberíamos verlo para vivir más tiempo?
Now, the same group that have very high levels of stress who simply believe that stress wasn't bad for them, they had the lowest mortality rate of the entire study. So lower than people who had very little stress in their life. So to me, this was one of those really formative studies that said, oh, wow, this isn't about the stress. It's about how we interpret stress.
¿Por qué salir de la zona de confort?
And to your point, if you're constantly just in a zone of comfort, you're probably languishing. You're probably not finding something that's bringing meaning and purpose to your life.
Un mensaje que impactará profundamente.
I have to back up here and probably insult a lot of people because I think the health and wellness industry it's a multi-billion-dollar industry that is built on the premise of you are broken, you need help, here's how you can get better. And what I want to say to people is you're not.
What if stress wasn't what you thought it was? What if high stress could actually help you live longer or shorter, depending only on what you believe about it? In this episode, Rebecca Heiss, we dive into her new book, Springboard. We explore unexpected metaphors, a spring that builds up energy, a tiger you can invite to tea, and a simple rule that forces you to ask whether what you're facing could actually kill you in 3 minutes. You will discover how small challenges can rewire your brain, why curiosity and fear can never coexist, and the hidden cost of staying in your comfort zone. We will also uncover what happened to her during the worst month of her life. But we're not giving away all the answers here. To truly understand how to turn stress into your greatest ally, you will have to listen to the full episode.
Rebecca, welcome to Hackers del Talento. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me on, Ricardo. I'm excited for the conversation.
Well, I really enjoy your book and I would love to talk a lot about it.
Yeah.
But first, I want to know you a little bit.
Yeah.
And can you tell me like your story and especially your parents' story?
Yeah, sure. So I was born in upstate New York I'm the daughter of a school teacher, a kindergarten teacher, and a minister. So I had a whole lot of preaching happening in my house, lots of teaching and preaching. And so storytelling was kind of a natural thing for me to grow up in. And I loved the sciences. I fell in love with science from a very young age. And so spent a lot of time just collecting degrees. And then ultimately, short version of a much longer story, I quit my job, sold my house, and divorced my husband in a single month. And realized that.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah. So I'll give you a little more context. Unfortunately, my sister was diagnosed with a terminal cancer. And so it was one of those moments that I think we've all experienced, some moment that pulls the rug out from underneath us. And I kind of sat in that feeling of my own mortality and realized that if that had been my diagnosis, I'd be really disappointed with the life that I led. I'd chosen a safe career path. I had married a safe love. Everything was safe. But it wasn't high passion. It wasn't everything that I wanted. And so I quit my job, sold my house, and divorced my husband in a single month. And if you want to talk about high levels of stress, I certainly needed to begin applying all of my research in those days. And so, yeah, I started applying my research to my own life and then sharing it with others, and gave a TEDx talk around that time. And the rest, as they say, is history. So I've been a keynote speaker for the last 10 years.
Let's go back. Your father, but
Mhm.
it's like to have a father who is a priest.
Yeah.
What were like the memories that comes to your mind that
Gosh, there's so many core memories there. The first of which is, being able to do things in a church that a lot of people didn't get to do, like, not on a Sunday, going in and just flying airplanes off the balcony, driving race cars driving those little remote control race cars through the fellowship halls. My dad was a really, really great guy. He is a great guy. And a wonderful storyteller. And so my sister and I used to challenge him every Sunday to work in like a word or a phrase into his sermon. And it was his way of getting us to pay attention to what he was saying, but it was our way of having a little fun with him. So, on any given Sunday, it would be like, well, can you work in the word calendar into the into the sermon? And my sister and I would listen and wait for it, and inevitably he found a way to do it. So I always appreciated the customized storytelling he did.
when you analyze the story of Martin Luther King,
Yeah.
and he practiced a lot of speeches while he was like going to church and so on, and that's like an incredible skill if you want to lead or change a society.
Yeah. And yet one of my favorite stories about Martin Luther King Jr. is his most famous speech, arguably, the I Have a Dream speech, is when he threw out all of his notes and he really spoke from his heart. And I think there's so many lessons there in, when do we need to throw out all of our notes? When do we need to stop, acting from the training that we have and start really leaning into our heart-led truths and authentic selves? So, yeah.
And going forward, you study biology?
I did. So I have an undergraduate degree in biology, and then I have 2 master's degrees, one in ornithology, which if you know what that is, you're probably almost as big of a nerd as I am. So I'm a bird nerd, ornithology, and another degree in evolution and human behavior. And then my PhD is in stress physiology. So I basically didn't know what I wanted to do with life. And so I just kept going to school because it was fun for me. I love learning.
Then you should come here to Colombia. I don't know if you've been here before, but it's the country with the most diverse and how do you say, birds in the world.
I have been to Colombia. I would love to return. It is a beautiful country, and I didn't get enough time there. So to me, probably the best education that anybody can have is to get a passport and just go. So I hope to return someday.
What was like the spark going forward? I'm not going to talk yet about the book. Then what happens to your life? You start doing a lot of research, or you did your famous TED talk. What happened?
Yeah, I mean, I started finding my voice, I think. As a kid, I always loved the theater. I loved the stage. I loved to be in the spotlight. But it was always really nerve-wracking. And I thought, I had these imposter thoughts that I think so many of us share of, oh, I'm not enough, or what if they judge me, or what if I fail or I get rejected? And it held me back. And I really leaned into it. Maybe for the first time in my life, I started betting on myself and my own research and really applying it. I'd studied it in the lab, and I applied it to real life. And I was like, oh gosh, this actually works. I shouldn't keep this to myself. This is really valuable information. So I had been teaching at the time. One of my students nominated me for a TEDx, and I did that one, and then I did another one, and then I did another one, and companies started pulling me aside and saying, hey, would you come speak to my company? And I'll never forget the very first speech that I did. The CEO handed me a paycheck, and I was like, wait, what? This is something that people do for a living? And it blew my mind. So I didn't even know about this industry, the speaking industry that I'm now deeply embedded in. But it was a fun way for me to enjoy my research and share it. So yeah, that's how I got my start.
What's your TED Talk that you like the most?
Don't make me choose. Okay, so here's the interesting thing about the TED Talks that I gave. None of them are related directly to the research that I do. So there's 3 TED Talks. The first one is on diversity and how we see other people who look different, act different, sound different from us. The second one is on sexual assault and the freeze response. And the third one is on, it's actually based on the Barbie movie that just came out, and how gender roles align so that I don't think we're giving men enough credit. And unfortunately, I think we're holding them back. Even as we cheerlead women into positions of traditional masculine power, we're not cheerleading men into the roles of traditional feminine power. So 3 completely different talks, and none of them about stress. So directly about stress. So it's kind of fun. It's just a nice outlet for me to explore other topics that I'm interested in.
And so let's go directly to the stress, to the book. What was like the spark that made you write Springboard? Like, was there like a personal moment, like the one you told me before, like this month, when stress became like your teacher or your instead of your own, or
Yes.
what was it?
Yes. So a lot of the motivation and inspiration for writing Springboard came from traveling through South America. I unfortunately became very ill in Bolivia and was flown back to the United States and went into septic shock and was in the hospital for a number of weeks. And during that time, one of my dearest friends was also diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And again, these like really jarring moments in your life. And I won't give away the whole story. What I'll say is, obviously, I survived. And my friend, remarkably, is one of the 1% of people who seem to have beat this stage 4 cancer. And so much of that I credit to the friend group that came together around this massive stressor and an event, and poured into one another. And that's one of the messages that I share in my book, is that we always see stress as bad, but stress also really brings people together. And we rise to some of our biggest challenges in remarkable and really powerfully bonding ways when we go through discomfort and challenge as a team.
So you say that stress isn't something to escape, but something to, I don't know, like harness.
Yeah.
When did you first start seeing it that way? Like, okay, I need to change my mindset about stress.
Yeah, so there was a study that came out in 2013 that was really formative to me. And essentially we looked at 30,000 Americans across 8 years' time. And the premise was, these are very high stress people, and they simply asked the question, do you believe that stress is bad for your health? And if you're a high stress individual who believes that stress is bad for your health, you have a really high mortality rate. So about 43% of those people, died. It was pretty bad, right? Now, the same group that have very high levels of stress, who simply believe that stress wasn't bad for them, they had the lowest mortality rate of the entire study. So lower than people who had very little stress in their life. So to me, this was one of those really formative studies that said, oh, wow, this isn't about the stress. It's about how we interpret stress. It's about what that stress means to us. And if we can begin to shift people's mindset about this idea that stress isn't good or bad, it just is energy that we get to use and point along a trajectory to serve us, that is a game changer for people's lives.
I love the title of the book.
Thanks.
I think it's powerful, Springboard.
Yeah.
But why did you choose that metaphor to frame stress?
I keep thinking about stress as something that is compounding, right? It's not when people get mad because somebody cuts them off in traffic, that's not the real stress in their life. It is layered on top of all of their past traumas, all of the stress that is compounding over and over and over again in their life. It's the parents that they're taking care of. It's the kids that they're taking care of. It's the spousal fight that they had that morning. And then somebody cuts them off in traffic, right? And so I began thinking about the compression of a spring. And, the more pressure you put on it, the more potential it has to launch you. And really, that's what stress is. It's just energy that can launch us in any number of directions. But I think we have more control over the direction that we take than we often give ourselves credit for.
Yeah. So important to think about stress and how would you probably said some things, but how would you explain your book to someone who believes that stress is always?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing I'll say is I will tell them to think about an Olympic athlete. And when do Olympic athletes break world records? And of course, the answer is when the pressure and the stress is at the peak, right? At the actual Olympics. They're not breaking world records during practice. And we all have the potential to use our stress to perform at our peak rather than have it control our lives. And so the book really is broken down into my Fearless formula, which is this 3-step process based on decades of research that helps us transform all of the stress energy and point it in a way to serve us. And it starts with the tiger. And the tiger is in reference.
That was one question. Tell me about this.
The tiger
of the tower.
So, look, the tiger is the stressor itself. It's the thing we can't control. It's the thing that feels like it's charging us all the time. And this reference comes from another stress physiologist, Robert Sapolsky, who wrote a great book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. Highly recommend it. And he said, look, your stress response is really built for 3 minutes of screaming terror through the savannah, right? Because you're getting chased by tigers, lions, and bears. Oh my. Today, of course, we're not getting chased by lions and tigers and bears, right? Typically, the stress response isn't in response to a life and death situation, but our brain doesn't know that. And so it treats, getting cut off in traffic or having that overwhelming inbox as if it were a tiger charging you. And so the first step of the process is to recognize it's not a tiger, right? This thing is not going to kill me in the next 3 minutes. And when we recognize that the stressor won't kill us in 3 minutes, we can then begin to use the energy in a different way.
Yeah, I was thinking about there's saying, I don't know if there are studies that say that if you have a lot of stress for a long period, you might even get cancer or other things.
Yeah. So again, this comes down to stress mindset. Yes, stress long-term can be bad if you believe that stress is bad. And that's that 2013 study where it really matters how we view our stress, right? Because when you go for a run, which everybody would probably argue is a pretty healthy activity, you're putting your body under tremendous stress. So that's stress too. So what makes that healthy and, your overflowing inbox not healthy? You're having the same physiological response. It's how we're interpreting it. And so I think it's really, really important to recognize how much our ability to tell a story about the stress influences how our body actually reacts to it.
I was trying to connect the ideas of your book with what I read in the news or the different research. And in your view, let's talk about resilience. It's something overrated. Should we be teaching people to rebound instead of endure, or what's your view about it?
So look, I have to back up here and probably insult a lot of people because I think the health and wellness industry it's a multi-billion-dollar industry that is built on the premise of you are broken, you need help, here's how you can get better. And what I want to say to people is you're not broken. This isn't something that stress is your stress response is a feature. It's not a bug. This is a good thing. So the idea that you have to fix yourself after being broken is, I think, the wrong approach. I think we have to recognize that this thing that is happening to us, it's good. Like, the only people without stress are dead. You don't want to be a dead person, right? Stress isn't a bad thing. So this whole shift needs to happen in the way we approach stress in the health and wellness industry.
Yeah. And
Sorry,
there is a lot of marketing in the wellness industry.
Yes. And that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yep.
And what does it mean to metabolize stress into something useful? Like, can you give me like some examples of someone who's working or a parent or?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, this is really the second step. So once we've identified that it's not a tiger, we can then begin to transfer the energy and as you say, metabolize it in a new way. And one of my favorite examples of this is recognizing that the exact same hormonal profile happens in your body when you're excited as when you're anxious, nervous, scared, angry. Like, you're having almost the identical hormones and neurotransmitters happening. So your body is having this experience. And the only real difference between an adventure or an ordeal is how our brain is interpreting that. And so, again, we don't get to control the hormones. And this is where I think people get the stress response wrong. Like, we're told to calm down or get rid of it. Well, good luck calming down. Like, I've never successfully told my adrenal glands to not release adrenaline and had them just respond appropriately, right? Like, my heart rate is going to increase. My adrenal glands will release adrenaline. Okay, now what do I do with that? How do I metabolize it? Well, I get to choose in this moment, this is my body preparing me to perform, and I can get excited about it. How can I use this to solve the problem? How can I use this to take one small action into the stress rather than trying to avoid the stress? So it turns out even productive anger, right? People try and not be angry at work. Absolutely not. Be angry. Just don't direct it at a person, direct it at a problem. And you'll be more creative, you'll be more productive, you'll come up with more innovative solutions. So the science is there to use this stress energy. It's just a matter of helping people not try and repress it.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I was thinking how, with all the research that you've done with the book, and if we take that book to the community of hackers del Talento, which are like the main CHROs of Latin America, what should they do with the book apart from reading it? But how can they take all that knowledge and put it in practice in a company?
Yeah. I mean, the first step as leaders is to model the behavior, right? And not try to repress stress, but to acknowledge it, to not avoid the tiger. I call it inviting the tiger in for tea. So you're in a team meeting and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so stressful. Good. Like, say that. Label it. This is stressful. This is a great opportunity for us to rise to the occasion, to rise to the challenge. You're going to feel a lot of energy. You're going to feel a lot of these, emotions. You're going to be heightened. That's great. Let's transfer that into excitement. How can we get curious? And this is one of my favorite techniques because curiosity and fear cannot coexist. There's literally no brain mechanism, right? Because for 200,000 plus years, nobody ever had a tiger charging them and went, wonder how fast it's coming, right? Like, they died.
I'm going to measure the speed.
Yeah, exactly.
He's fat. Okay, he ate me.
Yeah. And as a result, our brain never evolved the capacity to hold curiosity and fear together. So when we get curious, when we begin to ask questions, I wonder what this means. I wonder how I can use this. I wonder what it would look like if we begin to take agency back. And the thing that I'll say leaders probably need to really understand here is under periods of high uncertainty and fear, the number one thing that people want is control. And so what they tend to do is shut down, because when I don't take an action, I'm in control, right? If I take no action, I know the outcome. And it is your job then to push them to take some small risk, some small steps, these little trajectories into the stressor, so that they gain that agency back and they're able to influence the outcome just a little bit. And when they do that, they're going to gain some momentum and start to build trust in themselves again. And they get kicked out of this like learned helplessness response and into a place where they're like, oh, I can have some hope moving forward into the uncertainty.
That's amazing. I was thinking about Gen Z, and
Yeah.
because usually you think about this generation and you think about our generation who has a lot of anxiety, burnout, and ambition.
Mm-hmm.
What advice, or
Mm.
probably many advice, would you give to this generation?
Oh, gosh. Gen Z, let me speak to you directly for a second. Looking at our research from last year, you are special. And I mean that in not a great way. Unfortunately, Gen Z has a rate of anxiety and stress that is absolutely off the charts. And with that, I want to say, great. You also have an opportunity. That means like you have an opportunity to use that stress in a way that the boomers, Gen X, like none of us have ever used before. To me, I see stress as an opportunity and anxiety in the same way. This is not, I'll say it again, this is not a bug, this is a feature. But it is so imperative that we teach this generation how to use that stress in a healthy way rather than constantly trying to get rid of it, because that is going to lead to the cycle of burnout. And honestly, one of the things we see too is when people try and get rid of stress, they stress out even more because they're like, oh, I have to do this and I have to do that. And then it doesn't work. And then they blame themselves and they feel guilty and they feel bad. And humans are weird in that we're the only species that creates our own stress, right? And Gen Z is a classic example of this because they're going, oh, I'm a bad person. I can't get it right. This isn't working for me. And now we're generating even more stress from our thoughts. So full stop, Gen Z in particular, we see you. I can confirm your anxiety and stress levels are off the charts, which gives you the opportunity to absolutely outperform all of us. But you gotta switch your stress mindset.
And talking about Gen Z, and another topic that comes to my mind is comfort. Like,
Yeah.
are we like kind of addicted to comfort? Like, what's the cost and what happens to our stress level?
Yeah. So this is an interesting one because I think yes and no. We have, of course, if you look around the environment that we live in today, most of us every day are not struggling to literally survive, right? We've got creature comforts where we've got a thermostat that we set and it regulates our temperature. We've got a fridge where we can open and get some food. We're not hunting and gathering for our food. So yeah, there's a level of comfort that we've reached. The anxiety and stress, I think, come in because our brain gets bored. And so what ends up happening is because of that comfort, we pick up things like this. We pick up our phones, we pick up our devices, and we create more stress than we need to because our brain is seeking this thing that it doesn't quite understand. It's seeking some comfort in the discomfort, if that makes sense. It's like, this isn't right. It's why people pay money to go run marathons. They pay money to go do these Spartan races where there's really big challenges and physicality to get uncomfortable. And I think we're seeking that at some level. But I think that's a missing piece for a lot of us is we're finding levels of discomfort in areas that we don't expect. And then we're not recognizing how dysregulating things like our technology can be. Social media in particular. We think that's comfort. We do.
Yeah.
We think that's comfort. It's not.
So comfort zones for you are like cages, more or less.
Yes and no. If we are constantly seeking discomfort, I don't think that's healthy either. I'll be honest with you, right? Like there are people that are like, oh, if you're comfortable, then you gotta constantly get out of the cage. No, look, it's important to kick back and have a level of psychological safety and comfort with your friends and by yourself. And to your point, if you're constantly just in a zone of comfort, you're probably languishing. you're probably not finding something that's bringing meaning and purpose to your life. So again, this is some of my favorite research looked at what makes for a meaningful, purposeful life. And it turns out in order to have a meaningful, purposeful life, you also have to have a really stressful life, because stress was the number one correlate. So past stressful events, current state of stress, even future worry and anxiety were highly correlated to purposeful, meaningful lives. So again, your comfort in the moment is maybe sacrificing, your ultimately your purposeful life.
Do we wear different masks?
I would argue, yeah. I think we always wear a mask. And I don't necessarily think it's always a bad thing. So here's what I'll say to that. Can you show up completely authentically all the time? Probably not. Like, if I was to show up authentically with you right now, I would not be in a dress shirt. I can tell you that much. I would be in a t-shirt. I would have my hair pulled back. I would not have makeup on. And that would be fine for you and I hanging out as friends. It's maybe not the most professional appearance. Okay, so be it. Wearing a mask occasionally can be to our benefit. And here's why. So emotions operate on two different scales. They're the emotional arousal level. So how are we, like, dead asleep, or are we highly aroused? Like, do we have anger or excitement or stress or anxiety? So that's one level. The other level is emotional balance. And that's what we do get to control. So is it good or is it bad? And so wearing a mask means we actually get to decide that this is good, even if we feel like it's bad. So let me give you an example. Every single time I go on stage, I'm nervous, right? I'm scared. And so if I showed up completely authentically, no mask on, I'd probably show up like, hey guys, my name is Dr. Heiss. Really excited to be here, right? That's not a great performance. But if I put my mask on and I begin to act as if I'm excited, here's where the shift begins to happen. That emotional balance where I'm saying, oh, I'm excited about this. Like, I'm lying to myself. I'm wearing a mask for myself. But then you, Ricardo, sitting in the audience, sees me smiling, confident, shoulders back. And you're like, oh, she's excited. And I'm actually doing better as a result. And then I get your feedback that, like, she must be excited. And humans are incredibly emotionally contagious. So that wears off on me and I become a little more excited and a little less nervous. And so when we wear masks, they can actually serve us and we can begin to become the thing that we're acting as if. So it's a yes and situation. Like, do I want people to fake their way through life? No. But if you can act a little bit as if you're having an adventure, as if you're excited, as if things are going well, they might begin to be.
I read your book really
Yeah.
fast, and there are a lot of incredible phrases. I will
Thanks.
save that for the last part of the conversation. And can we create like a stress workout or a stress gym or something
love
like
that.
so we can adapt? Because you say that our mindset is like a stone age and we're living like in a modern world, so we need to
Yeah.
get there faster.
Sure. I mean, I call it tiger training, and it's seeking these active, safe forms of discomfort. So maybe it's going out and singing on a street corner for 15 seconds. You know, people are going to look at you. They might pull their kids to the opposite side of the sidewalk, but it's not going to kill you. And then your brain layers this down and says, interesting, stress response, didn't die today, right? And then you can go to another safe form of discomfort, like paying for somebody's coffee order. Now, like, that sounds so easy. But you go to do it and you're like, oh, what are they going to think? Do they think that I'm hitting on them? Are they going to think that I don't think that they have the money to cover it? Like, you start telling all these stories and it becomes this stressful situation. Then you do it and nothing bad happens. In fact, they probably will thank you. And you're like, oh, good. And again, your brain goes, interesting, stress response, didn't die today. So what you're doing is you're creating a pathway for your brain to recognize not every stressful situation is life and death. And that is essential. So that was kind of like my gym for your brain, as it were. Yeah.
I have some quotes that
I'm excited.
people should pay attention to.
All right. I want to hear your feedback on this.
One that I like is, we don't need to be fearless. We need to be fearless.
So true. So true. Yeah. Being fearless is first of all, it's a fool's errand. Like, that has you jumping into the cage of the tiger. That's dumb. Like, don't do that. But fearing things a little bit less, like rejection. You reject me at the end of the day. That's okay. I'm not going to die from that. And the people that really love you, really care about you, really want you employed with them, they're probably not going to reject you. So it's a powerful way of showing up, like fearing life a little bit less.
And another one about fear is, your fear of rejection is ancient. Your need for acceptance is primal, but your future is yours to build.
Bingo. Yeah.
That's a good one.
Thank you. Thanks. I appreciate that.
So what happens next? And what are you looking for with the book, with society?
I hope, I'll tell you my hopes. What I hope happens next is I hope that as many people as possible will get this book, will get this message, will begin to recognize that stress isn't necessarily bad. I kind of see myself as a PR agent for stress. Like, hey, stress, it's not so bad. Hey guys, it's okay. And so I'm really hoping to be a megaphone for stress in society and really help people live stressful lives in a meaningful way that allows them to perform at their peak. That's the next step for me, is continue to speak, continue to try and push this message as hard as I can, and talk to amazing people like you to reach out to other listeners.
And the usual question that we have at the end is, what's a good advice someone gave to you, and what's a good advice that you usually give?
Probably the best advice I ever received was from my grandmother. And she said, don't let your options be your burdens. And I love that advice so much, because so frequently we allow our options. There's so many different decisions. There's so many paths we can take. There's so many possibilities become stressors in our lives. And they should never be stress. Pick one. Go down it for a little bit. Every decision, outside of maybe 2 or 3, are reversible. And we can try something new. So keep taking actions. And that leads into the advice that I give people, which is the cost of inaction is almost always higher than the cost of action. So don't hold back. Take the action. Regrets fester for a reason. We never have the data, and so we always are left wondering what if. So I would say, go do the thing. Do the thing.
What a great conversation. Here are my 5 hacks from this talk with Rebecca Heiss. First, stress isn't the enemy. Your story is. The 30,000 person study showed it's not the amount of stress that kills you, but believing that it will. Second, name your fear to disarm it. Saying, this stresses me out, activates the rational brain and lowers the threat. Third, ask the 3-minute question. Will this kill me in 3 minutes like a tiger would? If not, use it as fuel. Fourth, the compressed spring is your metaphor. Every pressure builds energy. If you direct it, it propels you. If you repress it, it breaks you. And finally, comfort has a hidden cost. Constant safety seeking can suffocate you more than taking risk. See you in another episode of Hackers del Talento. Follow us on YouTube.